Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe to the channel for regular content on ancient architecture, as well as all the latest news from the world of archaeology. On the Egyptian coast of the Red Sea, Wadi el-Jarf is a somewhat quiet and unassuming place today. But in 2013, an incredible discovery was made. Hundreds of fragments of ancient papyrus were found, buried in front of man-made caves that were made to store boats at this once ancient harbour. Zahi Hawass called it the greatest discovery in Egypt in the 21st century, because it contained a papyrus logbook written more than 4,500 years ago by Pierre, a middle-ranking official with the title Inspector, and he was writing during the 27th year of the reign of Pharoah Khufu. He was an overseer in charge of a cargo boat and a team of around 40 workmen. And what makes it a great discovery? Well, this is the headline from the IFL Science website from September 2017, quote, "Ancient papyrus provide insight to how the Great Pyramid of Giza was built," end quote. National Geographic went with the following, quote, "This ancient diary reveals how Egyptians built the Great Pyramid," end quote. The website Interesting Engineering used the headline, quote, "A 4,500-year-old papyrus holds the answer to how the Great Pyramid was built," end quote. Here's a clip from the 2018 documentary Lost Secrets of the Pyramid.
This papyrus is the only first-hand account of the building of the Great Pyramid ever found.
And let me just play this clip from the Channel 4 documentary Egypt's Great Pyramid, The New Evidence.
It's the only first-hand account of the construction of the Great Pyramid.
So yes, if these headlines and soundbites are accurate, I would agree with Zahi Hawass that this is the greatest discovery in Egypt in the 21st century. But therein lies the major problem. In no way, shape or form does the Diary of Pierre reveal how the Egyptians built the Great Pyramid. And to prove it, over the next few minutes, however mundane this may be to watch, I'll read out the translated logbook. I'll only read out what's legible and what we can make sense of. Some words have also been added to make the entries full sentences, but I think it's important we all hear the contents, so we can truly evaluate the claims. And then afterwards, I'll tell you what I think about the discovery. So get some coffee and try and stay awake, because here we go. Day 3. Cast off from the Royal Palace, sailing upriver towards Torah. Spend the night there. Day 4. Cast off from Torah. Morning sail downriver towards Akhet-Khufu. Spend the night. Day 5. Cast off from Torah in the afternoon. Sail towards Akhet-Khufu. Day 6. Cast off from Akhet-Khufu and sail upriver towards Torah. Day 7. Cast off in the morning. Day 8. Cast off in the morning from Torah. Sail downriver towards Akhet-Khufu. Spend the night there. Day 9. Cast off in the morning from Akhet-Khufu, sail upriver, spend the night. Day 10. Cast off from Torah, moor in Akhet-Khufu. Day 11. Inspector Pierre spends the day with his file in carrying out work related to the dike of Roshi Khufu. Day 13. Inspector Pierre spends the day with his file at the dike which is in Roshi Khufu. Day 14. Inspector Pierre spends the day with his file on the dike of Roshi Khufu. Day 25. Inspector Pierre spends the day with his file hauling stone in Chora South. Spends the night at Chora South. Day 26. Inspector Pierre casts off with his file from Chora South, loaded with stone for Akhet-Khufu. Spends the night at Shi Khufu. Day 27. Sets sail from Shi Khufu, sails towards Akhet-Khufu loaded with stone, spends the night at Akhet-Khufu. Day 28. Casts off from Akhet-Khufu in the morning, sails upriver towards Chora South. Day 29. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file hauling stone in Tora South. Spends the night at Tora South. Day 30. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file hauling stone in Tora South. Spends the night at Tora South. First day of the month. The director of Egypt casts off for Heliopolis in a transport boat to bring us food from Heliopolis, while the elite is in Tora. Day 2. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file hauling stone in Tora North. Spends the night at Tora North. Day 3. Inspector Mera casts off from Tora North, sails towards Akhet-Khufu loaded with stone. Day 4. The director of Egypt comes back from Heliopolis with 40 sacks and a large measure of bread, while the elite hauls stone in Tora North. Day 5. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file, loading stones onto the boats of the elite in Tora North. Spends the night at Tora. Day 6. Inspector Mera sets sail with a boat of the naval section of the file of Taur, going downriver towards Akhet-Khufu. Spends the night at Khufu. Day 7. Sets sail in the morning towards Akhet-Khufu, sails towing the boats towards Tora North. Day 8. Sets sail from Khufu, sails towards Tora North. Inspector Mera spends the day with a boat of Taur. Day 13. Spends the night at Tora South. Day 14. Hauling stones, spends the night in Tora South. Day 15. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file hauling stone in Tora South. Spends the night in Tora South. Day 16. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file loading the boats with stone. Sails downriver. Spends the night at Khufu. Day 17. Casts off from Khufu in the morning. Sails towards Akhet-Khufu. Sails from Akhet-Khufu. Spends the night at Khufu. Day 18. Spends the night at Tora South. Day 19. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file hauling stone in Tora South. Day 20. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file hauling stones in Tora South. Loads 5 craft. Spends the night at Tora. Day 21. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file, loading a transport ship at Tora North. Sets sail from Tora in the afternoon. Day 22. Spends the night at Khufu. In the morning sets sail from Khufu, sails towards Akhet-Khufu, spends the night at the chapel of Akhet-Khufu. Day 23. The director of 10 Hesse spends the day with his naval section in Khufu because a decision to cast off was taken. Spends the night at Khufu. Day 24. Inspector Mera spends the day with his file, hauling stones with those who are on the register of the elite, the Aper teams, and the noble Ankarf, director of Khufu. Day 25. Inspector Mera spends the day with his team hauling stones in Tora. Spends the night in Tora North. If Mera knew that this would be held in such high regard, a document of immense historical importance today in the 21st century, I'm sure he would have made that a bit more riveting. Maybe a boat chase down the Nile. But alas, that was the diary of Mera. It's as dry as the desert sand, but so it should be. We can't blame Mera. It's just a logbook after all. So now back to that National Geographic headline, quote, "This ancient diary reveals how Egyptians built the Great Pyramid," end quote. And we can see just how true that is. All the diary tells us is that Mera transports stone from Tora and takes it to Akhet-Khufu. We learn he's involved in some kind of work related to a dike at Khufu, directed by Khufu's half-brother and vizier Ankarf. Mera also sometimes spends the night at Khufu, Akhet-Khufu and Khufu, 3 different places. Mera spends a lot of time hauling stone with his men at Tora North and Tora South, and we learn that food is brought to Tora from Heliopolis. And that really is the top line information. That's pretty much everything we learn from the Diary of Mera related to the Great Pyramid. And that's because in the 4th dynasty, Akhet-Khufu was the name of the Great Pyramid. But transporting stone from Tora to Giza does not tell us how the Great Pyramid was built. In fact, it doesn't tell us anything about the pyramid we didn't know already, because we know there was a limestone quarry at Tora in the Old Kingdom, and we know that this bright white limestone was used to case the Great Pyramid. But it was also used on the Queen's pyramids, the dozens and dozens of mastabas, the causeway and temples, and more. And that really is a key point. The diary does not tell us what the stone was used for. It doesn't tell us the structure in the necropolis Mera's stone ends up at. And in the diary, the use of the term Akhet-Khufu is not referring to the actual physical Great Pyramid itself. What I mean is, when Mera says he sails to Akhet-Khufu, he's not saying he's sailing right up to the pyramid's exterior. When he spends the night at Akhet-Khufu, he's not making his bed in the king's or queen's chamber. Yes, in the 4th dynasty, Akhet-Khufu was the name of the Great Pyramid, but clearly in the Diary of Mera, it's referring to this specific region of the Giza Plateau, the enormous and sprawling site of the pyramid complex. He's taking the stone to the harbour of the pyramid complex building site in the 37th year of Khufu's reign. Stone was quarried from Tora. Mera and his men got it into the boats, and they took the stone to the harbour near the Great Pyramid. The stone would then be offloaded and left with the work gangs that were stationed on the Giza Plateau. The Tora stone could have been used for the Valley Temple or Mortuary Temple of Khufu. It could have been used for the causeway or one of the many mastabas. It could have been used for a Queen's Pyramid or even a boundary wall. And yes, it could have been used for casing the Great Pyramid. And although we haven't heard him say it in a documentary, it appears that Mark Lehner agrees. Because in a 2020 paper called Mera and the Sphinx, he says, quote, "In fact, some of the fine limestone that Mera delivered might have been for Khufu's causeway, upper pyramid temple, pyramid court, enclosure wall and valley temple." End quote. In truth, we have absolutely no specifics about what Mera's stone was used for. All we know is that stone was taken from Tora and it was dropped off at the edge of the Giza Plateau. And this happened in year 27 of Khufu's reign. So, although yes, it is a very cool and important discovery, and yes, it is absolutely amazing to have a piece of a primary source, a real logbook of work from the reign of Khufu, regarding the building of the Great Pyramid, the Diary of Mera does not tell us anything we didn't already know. Before 2013, we already knew that Tora limestone was a primary building material and it was used all across the Giza necropolis, not just on the pyramid itself. And we already knew it had been transported by boat because Tora is on the other side of the Nile. Regarding the specific locations of Roshi Khufu and Shi Khufu, right now we don't know exactly where they are. But Mark Lehner believes Mera's description matches up with his own archaeological excavations to the east of the Great Pyramid, and so the ancient Egyptian research associates produced this diagram. But I am aware that some researchers disagree, and from Mera's own words, it does seem feasible there is actually more distance between Akhet-Khufu, Roshi Khufu and Shi Khufu, because on Lehner's map, they're located just a few minutes from each other. Roshi Khufu means mouth of the Lake of Khufu, and wherever it is, it seems to have been like a staging post for teams arriving from Tora. It feels like an administrative centre under the direction of Ankaf. According to the logbook, workers often spent the night here. Khufu means Lake of Khufu, and the diary implies there was another stop-off point at this location, somewhere you could stay overnight. The knowledge of the Lake of Khufu was no surprise to archaeologists because we know that in the 4th dynasty, to the east of the Giza Plateau, a number of artificial basins were created. These allowed the heavily laden boats to leave the River Nile and deposit their cargo right at the edge of the plateau. The logbook basically confirms what was discovered in previous excavations. The man who discovered the papyrus, Pierre Tallet, is not as dramatic as the headlines in the popular media and documentaries. In his book that translates the text into English, he specifically says, quote, "There is no mention of the construction techniques that were employed, which are at present the object of passionate and contradictory debates." End quote. And regarding the Torah limestone, he says, quote, "They are most probably but not exclusively used in the exterior cladding of the monument." End quote. The most probably is wishful thinking, because there's no reason to think this. The text is a fascinating look at the everyday life of Inspector Mera during building works that were ongoing at Giza. He was a man who was responsible for taking stone from Torah to the plateau. He was in charge of his own team of men, and he gives us some visual clues regarding the site and how you could take stone directly from Torah to Giza by boat. By itself, the discovery is fascinating and very important in the study of 4th dynasty Egypt. It's the oldest known papyrus ever discovered, and that in itself is astonishing, but it's often cited to be something more than it is. The truth is, it does not give us any insight into how the Great Pyramid was built. It isn't a specific first-person account of the Great Pyramid's construction, and although yes, some people call me mainstream Matt, the Diary of Mera does not end the debate of the age of the Great Pyramid, because it doesn't mention the building of the Great Pyramid specifically. It tells us that white fine Chura limestone was quarried at Torah and taken by boat to the harbour of the Great Pyramid complex, and this was taking place in year 27 of Khufu's reign. We have absolutely no idea how this stone was to be used. We don't know if it was, for example, exclusively for use on the Western Cemetery mastabas, or if it was to case one of the Queen's pyramids, or, forgive me for saying, to renovate the Great Pyramid that was built by Atlanteans. No, I don't believe the Great Pyramid was built by a lost ancient civilization. I think there is more than enough evidence to place its origins in the 4th dynasty, and I do believe it was built during the reign of Khufu. I'm just being fair with the facts, because the Diary of Mera says nothing specific about the Great Pyramid. It doesn't help us date it, and it doesn't tell us how it was built. It's not, as the Channel 4 documentary says,
It's the only first-hand account of the construction of the Great Pyramid.
We learn a lot about how stone was being transported. We learned that a boatload of stone could travel for 20 kilometres in one day, but in truth, the Diary of Mera is not a first-hand account of the building of the ancient wonder. It doesn't tell us anything about the construction of the Great Pyramid, just that stone was being taken to the Great Pyramid complex towards the end of Khufu's reign, something we already knew. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.